I still remember the day the sky changed color. It wasn't anything supernatural, no blood-red moon or apocalyptic firestorm. It was simply busy. Ships. Hundreds of them. Long silver hulls, sails of light that shimmered in shades I didn't even know had names. They appeared without warning, slicing through the clouds with eerie grace. I was on the balcony of the United Nations headquarters in New York, coffee in one hand, briefing notes in the other, when the first of them blotted out the sun. Somewhere below me, horns blared, not from panic, but traffic jams. Typical New York. Most people assume humanity's first reaction to an alien fleet would be screaming, running, or barricading ourselves in bunkers. But when the feeds went live, what I saw was smiles. Everywhere. People flooding the streets, pointing phones skyward, live streams popping up faster than the ships could descend. The Galactic Empire, though we didn't know their name yet, had arrived expecting awe. Perhaps submission. I suspect they had even prepared for hostility. What they didn't prepare for was applause. By the time I stepped inside the General Assembly chamber, the first alien envoy was already waiting at the podium. I can't describe them easily, tall, elegant, with eyes like molten copper and clothes that shimmered like water. Their translator drone hovered beside them, a sphere of glass humming with energy. They introduced themselves as the Imperial Voice of Trith KL, representative of the Galactic Empire, rulers of 73 systems and protectors of lesser civilizations. I could practically hear the capital letters. Their speech was a masterpiece of imperial diplomacy, grand phrases about mutual prosperity, integration, and guided advancement. Every so often, the envoy would pause, as if expecting us to drop to our knees in gratitude. Instead, the human delegation, presidents, prime ministers, scientists, and one YouTuber I swear was only there because someone made a clerical error, just kept smiling. I think it unnerved them. You see, humans smile for a lot of reasons. Joy, politeness, mockery, defiance. The Empire had no context for this. To them, teeth-baring was a predator's threat display. They must have thought we were either dangerously stupid or suicidally bold. When the speech ended, the first questions from Earth weren't about surrender or tribute. They were curious. How fast do your ships go? What's your favorite planet in your empire? Do you have, space amusement parks? The envoy blinked, or maybe the alien equivalent of blinking, and stammered through answers. The scientist beside me scribbled notes like a child hearing a bedtime story. The real chaos began during the welcoming banquet. The Empire brought their own delicacies, shimmering blue fruits that pulsed faintly with light, crystalline wafers that tasted like mint and lightning, and a dish they called Sharthuan that, to our untrained eyes, looked suspiciously like glowing worms. In return, Earth had prepared what we thought were our finest offerings: Wagyu steak, saffron rice, fresh sushi, and deep-fried Mars bars. It was the Mars bars that changed everything. One of the alien envoys, a tall, solemn-looking officer in silver armor, took a bite. His copper eyes widened. Then he made a sound I later learned was their species' equivalent of a laugh. Within minutes, half the alien delegation was clustered around the dessert table. I caught the Emperor's representative looking around the room, clearly unsettled. We weren't bowing. We weren't trembling. We weren't even arguing. We were celebrating. Later, during the private trade discussions, things became even stranger for them. While they were talking tariffs, we were asking about tourism. While they described the proper etiquette for addressing the Emperor, we were suggesting a cultural exchange where their musicians toured Earth and maybe tried jazz. When they explained the complexity of their hyperlane network, we asked entirely seriously if they'd consider lending us a few starships for science. The smiles never stopped. I know what you're thinking, we must have been hiding something. And you're right. The truth was, Earth had been ready for space since long before we had the ships. Not militarily, perhaps our fleets were nothing compared to theirs. But socially? Strategically? We'd been preparing for empires for thousands of years. Rome, Britain, the Mongols, the Ottomans, the names change, but the pattern doesn't. We'd learned to survive them, outlast them, and in some cases, outgrow them. When the Empire came offering protection, we didn't hear safety. We heard opportunity. The grins in that room weren't submission, they were the quiet satisfaction of poker players holding a winning hand. 3 days after the first meeting, the Empire announced that Earth would be welcomed as a provisional member state. They expected us to celebrate with gratitude. Instead, our markets exploded with alien-themed merchandise before the ink was even dry. T-shirts with the Emperor's face, mugs shaped like their ships, even dating apps promising to match you with your perfect alien partner. By the end of the week, we were exporting Earth's culture faster than they could export technology. Music, movies, games, food, the Empire's citizens couldn't get enough. Our first shipment of Mars bars sold out across 3 star systems in hours. I suspect that was the moment the balance began to shift. The imperial voice of Trith Kal left Earth with a puzzled expression, or whatever the alien equivalent was. I don't think they realized then what had happened. But history remembers. Because the day the sky filled with flags wasn't the day Earth joined the Galactic Empire. It was the day the Galactic Empire joined Earth. And we never stopped smiling. The Galactic Empire arrived in style. 7 kilometers of polished alloy and graviton projectors slid into low orbit like a god descending from the clouds. The lead ship, later identified as the Imperial Pinnacle of Eternal Glory, I wish I was joking, cast a shadow across the Pacific so large that meteorologists had to adjust weather forecasts. Humanity had been waiting for this moment for centuries. First contact. Proof we weren't alone. History in the making. The Empire thought we'd greet them with fear or reverence. Instead, we sent a welcoming committee with 3 heads of state, a handful of scientists, 2 linguists, an astrophysicist, and a stand-up comedian. That last one was not a joke. He'd been part of a cultural outreach program and somehow ended up in the delegation. The aliens disembarked in formation, tall, elegant, draped in robes woven with threads of gold that shimmered as they moved. They carried staffs of authority that doubled as weapons, and their translator drones hovered around them like obedient fireflies. The lead ambassador introduced himself with a flourish. I am Lord Minister Zarkul of the Supreme Galactic Empire, voice of his radiance, master of the infinite realms, protector of all lesser civilizations. It was the kind of title you'd expect from a space opera villain. Our delegation didn't clap. They didn't gasp. They smiled. Every single one of them. Now here's the thing about smiles, the Empire didn't really have them. Their species' version of friendly communication was a subtle shift in skin iridescence, beautiful, but nothing like the human habit of flashing teeth. In their culture, showing teeth was a predator's challenge. So to them, an entire group of humans bearing teeth looked like we were all about to bite them. Lord Minister Zarkul pressed on with his speech, a long, winding declaration about integration of emerging species and mutual prosperity under imperial guidance. Every so often, he would pause, perhaps expecting applause or a pledge of allegiance. Instead, there was just that line of human smiles. I watched his confidence falter. The first question came from Dr. Patel, the astrophysicist. How do your hyperlanes handle gravitational anomalies from binary star systems? The second was from the Prime Minister of Canada. Do you allow member worlds to maintain their own local holidays? And then the comedian, bless him, leaned forward, voice full of mock curiosity. So, does your emperor have a sense of humor, or is he more of a death ray for bad punchlines kind of guy? The translator drones whirred in confusion before delivering the line in the Empire's language. I swear I heard one of the alien guards choke. From that moment on, the meeting turned into something the Empire clearly hadn't rehearsed for. During the ceremonial feast, our side kept cracking jokes, not cruel ones, just playful. When they brought out a dish of glowing blue fruit, someone asked if it was radioactive or just cosmic mood lighting. When the aliens described the Emperor's title, the comedian suggested it needed more sparkle and offered to lend him some sequin jackets. The Empire's delegation didn't laugh, not at first. But they noticed something: the humans weren't nervous. We weren't intimidated. We were entertained. That's when the discomfort began to creep in. You see, the Empire had met hundreds of species before us. Most either knelt immediately or fought desperately. But no one had ever treated them like guests at a casual dinner party. No one had ever made them feel like they were the ones being evaluated. By dessert, Zarkal was visibly uneasy. The humans were still smiling. Still asking strange questions. Still telling little jokes that made the translator drones hesitate for half a second, as if checking whether they should sanitize the meaning. Then came the moment I'll never forget. The comedian stood, glass in hand. A toast, he said. To new friends, shared futures, and the fact that neither of us is allergic to each other's air, because that would have been awkward. The humans laughed. Then, against all expectation, one of the alien envoys laughed too. Not their polite skin shimmer, but a sharp, almost barking sound. The rest of the delegation looked at him like he'd just committed high treason. Something shifted after that. The negotiations that followed weren't about conquest or surrender. We talked trade routes, cultural exchanges, food exports. Someone suggested a galactic talent show, half joking, and the Empire's envoy didn't dismiss it outright. Still, the smiles never left our faces. The Empire thought it meant compliance. In reality, it was the same expression a cat gives a bird that hasn't noticed the window is open. You see, the joke wasn't that we could beat them in a fight. We couldn't, not then. The joke was that we didn't need to. Humans had learned long ago that wars are expensive, but influence? Influence is cheap. If we could get the Empire's citizens hooked on our movies, music, memes, and Mars bars, their own people would start reshaping the culture from within. And it worked faster than anyone expected. Within a year, human comedy shows were streaming in 3-star systems. The Emperor's nephew was seen wearing a leather jacket modeled after 20th century biker gangs. Alien teens started quoting Earth movies in languages they barely understood. Lord Minister Zarkal returned for a second visit. This time, when the comedian greeted him, the alien's skin flickered in a pattern our translators identified as amusement. He didn't admit it, but he knew. He knew he'd been the butt of the first interstellar joke. And the best part? It was still going. Because the joke only humans understood was this: we'd already started winning the day we made the Galactic Empire laugh. I've studied the footage more times than I can count. The day humanity met the Galactic Empire is archived in every school's history library now, crisp 8K resolution, 30 camera angles, even a few drone feeds from above the clouds. The alien ships are always the first thing you notice. Enormous crescent-shaped vessels, their hulls patterned with shifting light like oil on water, descended through our atmosphere with unnerving precision. They took up positions above Earth's major capitals, New York, London, Beijing, Cape Town, as if they had rehearsed the choreography for weeks. And then there's the second thing you notice, the thing that still makes alien historians shake their heads in disbelief. We were smiling. Not just the politicians on the landing platforms. Not just the scientists in their clean suits. Not just the journalists and camera crews. Crowds in the streets, kids waving homemade signs, shop owners climbing onto rooftops, even a few people wearing plastic alien masks bought from joke stores the night before, all of them smiling. To the Empire, it must have looked like madness. I was too young to be there in person. Back then, I was a student of ancient history, still buried in books about Rome and the Ming Dynasty. But when the news broke, I spent the entire day glued to the screen, taking notes. It felt familiar. The Galactic Empire introduced itself with grand ceremony. Their lead representative, a tall, copperite figure draped in what looked like liquid gold, announced their name, their dominion over 73 systems, their pledge to guide emerging civilizations toward prosperity. They spoke with the same tone I'd heard in documentaries about colonial powers meeting tribes for the first time. And they paused, as if waiting for us to kneel. Instead, the first words from Earth's delegation were about cooperation, trade, and this part always makes me grin, whether their starships could be adapted for tourism. The aliens were confused. It wasn't just our questions, it was our expressions. In their cultures, smiles are rare. Teeth-baring is either aggression or threat. The idea of a crowd grinning like a row of predators was unsettling. They didn't know we'd been here before. Not with aliens, but with empires. From the moment humans began building cities, we've been meeting conquerors. Persians, Macedonians, Mongols, Romans, Ottomans, British, the names change, but the cycle doesn't. They arrive claiming they'll bring order, protection, enlightenment. They take, they reshape, they fall. The survivors learn. And we had learned. The smile of the Roman senator shaking the hand of the barbarian chieftain he intended to bribe. The smile of the merchant bowing to a colonial governor while quietly doubling prices on imported goods. The smile of the rebel leader posing for the camera at a signing ceremony, knowing the ink would dry long before the fighting stopped. The Empire thought it was writing the first chapter of a new story. But Earth had been reading this script for thousands of years. The banquet that followed First Contact is one of my favorite pieces of footage. The Empire's chefs served delicacies from across the stars, shimmering fruits, spice-laced crystal confections, a soup that glowed faintly in the dark. Our delegation brought sushi, wagyu beef, maple syrup, and deep-fried Mars bars. There's a clip, grainy because the camera was in the back, of one alien diplomat biting into a Mars bar, pausing, and then making a sound our translators later identified as pleasure mixed with confusion. That dessert would go on to become the Empire's most imported Terran food within a decade. Some historians argue that was the turning point, the moment the Empire realized we were more than just another primitive species to fold into their bureaucracy. But I disagree. I think the real turning point was more subtle. It was when they realized we weren't reacting to them, we were performing for them. The smiles, the questions, the casual confidence, it wasn't instinct. It was strategy. We made them underestimate us. Within a year, Earth was officially a provisional member state of the Empire. But by then, human movies were playing in alien theaters. Human music was streaming in 3 languages. Alien teenagers were wearing t-shirts with English slogans they didn't understand. We were in their homes, their ears, their thoughts. That's the part the footage doesn't show, the way influence seeps in quietly. While the Empire taught us about hyperlanes and quantum relay stations, we taught them about jazz and rock, about chocolate and caffeine, about comedy shows that made fun of everything, including ourselves. Empires fall for many reasons. War. Economics. Corruption. But sometimes, they fall because they stop being entirely themselves. They absorb so much of the world they're trying to rule that they wake up one day speaking someone else's language. By the time I was old enough to join the diplomatic corps, the Empire was already changing. Their markets sold human coffee. Their diplomats quoted Shakespeare. Their emperor's great-granddaughter was rumored to be dating a Terran musician. It wasn't conquest. Not in the way their historians like to frame it. And it wasn't submission either. It was cultural gravity. And all of it started with those smiles. Some alien historians still puzzle over it. Why, they ask, were humans smiling when the Empire arrived? They've written papers debating it. Was it defiance? Hospitality? Naivete? But we know the truth. We were smiling because we'd seen this all before. And we knew, even then, how the story would end.